Hi guys, thanks for joining me on Making with Marilyn. On today's video, I'm going to customize two of these little kitty hooded blankets that I got at Five Below for my two great nieces. Now to do this project, you would need something that is a high polyester count. This is 100% polyester. You'd need a printer with sublimation ink and sublimation paper. Then finally, you'd need some type of heat source. I'm going to use my heat press, but you could also use a Cricut Easy Press 2 for this project. The sublimation paper that I'm going to use for this project is Koala brand sublimation paper. This is just your basic 8.5 by 11. I picked this up off of Amazon. When you go to print on this, it's really easy to tell what's the front side, that's the plain side, and it's easy to tell which is the back side because it has the Koala brand stamped all over it. For my printer, I recently picked up this Epson EcoTank 2760 at Costco. Now to be able to use this for sublimation printing, you don't put the ink that came with it into the EcoTank. Instead, I bought some ink from Cosmos Ink. It's a sublimation ink, and I filled the tanks with it. Now for my design, I'm just going to put these little girls' names on the hooded blankets. So the next thing we're going to do is look at that design. For this project, I decided to make my design in Cricut Design Space. Now you could do it in Cricut, you could do it in Silhouette, Inkscape, Adobe Illustrator, or any other design software that you like. To make these two names, here's what I did. First thing I did is I went online and I found a background that I like, and I thought this was beautiful. I uploaded the background into Cricut Design Space, and then I saved it as a print and cut image. After inserting it into this project, I typed my names. And the font that I used is Arial Rounded MT Bold. After typing it, I got it sized the way I wanted it and spaced out the way I wanted it, and then I welded my letters together. Then I just took my name, placed it on top of my background, selected the background and the name, and I clicked Slice. Then after doing that, you can just drag away the extra pieces, deleting those, and you're left with this beautiful name. Now I'll go ahead and get rid of that. Now for most sublimation applications, you're going to want to print this in the mirror image. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it now. Flip horizontal. You could either do it now, or when you print it, you could tell it to mirror. Then lastly, while I have those two things selected, I'm going to go ahead and attach them together. That way they'll print exactly the way I see them. So I'm going to click on Make It. Now if I hadn't mirrored my design already, I would click Mirror right here, but I did, so I'll click Continue. Then I'm going to go right here and say Send to Printer. Now I want to go ahead and turn the bleed off. What bleed does is it gives you a little bit of excess color around everything so that if you're cutting each individual letter, you don't accidentally have some white showing. But I don't need that. Then I want to use my system dialog. What this means is I'll get to use the dialog of the printer and not just Cricut. So I'll click on that. Notice here it says after clicking print, your print dialog may appear behind your Design Space application. So it could be hidden back behind here. So I'm going to go ahead and click print. Now this would just spin and spin and spin until I go to my printer dialog screen and I make my selection there. So I want to change my quality to best. And then on my printer, I actually select the paper type on a little screen on the front of the printer. So I'll turn the camera around so that we can watch this print. Now on this printer, there's a flap back here that you just pull up. And then there's some paper guides that you put your paper between. You put your paper in, plain side forward, and that just falls into place between those two guides. Now that there's paper in it, it's asking me on the screen here if I want to use my premium matte paper, and I do, so I'll click confirm, and then over on my computer I'll hit that print button. So our print's done and it looks pretty, but when you add heat to this, it becomes even more vibrant. So I want to go ahead and cut these apart since I'm putting them on two different things. All right, now the excitement begins, so I'll meet you over at the heat press. For this project, I'm going to use my swing away heat press. If you don't have one of these, a Cricut Easy Press 2 would work fine. I have it preheated to 400 degrees, and when I press, I'll press for 40 seconds. Now to start with, I want to put down some blowout paper. And blowout paper doesn't mean it's a certain type of paper. It could be craft paper, butcher paper. You could even use just regular printer or copy paper. That's just in case any of the ink escapes. You don't want it getting on your bottom plate. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to pre-press this, and that's going to do two things. First of all, it's going to get any of the excess moisture out, and then second of all, it's going to lay these fibers down nicely so that they'll really take the ink well. Now notice I have my little bow hanging over the edge. Then I want to get this smoothed out just as much as possible so I'm not ironing any wrinkles into it down here. During the video, I forgot to use my lint roller. Now this is a step you really should do. And basically you're just going to roll in a few different directions to pick up any loose fibers. In my case, it turned out perfectly fine, but you just never know. So don't be like me and skip this step. All right, so I'm going to pre-press this for about 15 seconds. Then before I put my design down, I want to let this cool off quite a bit. Okay, that feels good, so we're ready to move on. Now I'm going to start with the name Piper. And fortunately, you can kind of see your design through it, and that'll help you put it where it should go. So I want the middle letter lined up with the middle of the hood. Now if you want to get really picky, go ahead and get your ruler out. That's something I would do. But in this case, I think I'll be just fine. Now the next step isn't necessary, but I think it's a good idea. This is some heat resistant tape. And I'm going to use just enough of this so that I know my design isn't going to shift when I set the plate down on top of it and then when I lift it up. So holding my design in place, I'm just going to put a piece on each of the top corners. Now that I have some ink down, I want to use another piece of blowout paper on the top. Then you might notice also that I do have a Teflon sheet attached to the top with magnets. So this time we're going to go the full 40 seconds. I'm going to tighten this down just a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and move this out of the way. Now, I don't want to take my design off until I've checked it. So I'll remove the blowout paper, and this is very, very hot. And then I'm just going to peel up one corner in case I want to put it back down and heat it for about 10 more seconds. But I can see that color is beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and let this cool off for a couple minutes so I can easily handle it, and then we'll see how it turned out. Okay, the moment of truth. And that turned out beautifully. Look how cute and vibrant that is. Now I can see the outline of where the paper was. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and set down something under my blanket. I'll get it smoothed out again. Now, if I wasn't so excited to show this off earlier, I could have just left it laying there and done this step. And you can already see that quite a bit of that imprint has come out, but I want to get the whole thing out. So I'll put my blowout paper back over it. Now I've turned my machine off, so it started cooling, but it's still extremely hot. So I'm just going to put it down for about 10 seconds. All right, so let's see if any of that ink came off on this. I might be able to see a really faint amount of ink on that, but it did a nice job of helping these fibers lay down smoothly. I can still barely see them there, but I'll tell you what, after you rough this up a few times, smooth it back down, that looks fine. Isn't it amazing what a $5 blanket and a little bit of sublimation ink and paper can do? That is so cute. Thanks so much for joining me. Until the next video, bye-bye.